On August 26, 1968, thousands of people take to the streets in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention to protest the Vietnam War. But how did police react to the protests? And why do some consider 1968 the most tumultuous year in U.S. history? The top Democratic presidential candidate was Vice President Hubert Humphrey of Minnesota, who publicly supported the war. The demonstrations were met with a heavy-handed response from Chicago police, who were supported by members of the National Guard. Officers used aggressive tactics, including tear gas, batons, and mass arrests, to disperse the demonstrators. Hundreds of people, including innocent bystanders, were beaten by the police. The violence even spilled into the convention hall as guards roughed up delegates and members of the press, including CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace, who was punched in the face. Humphrey would go on to win the Democratic nomination, but lose to Republican Richard Nixon in the general election. 8 political radicals, the so-called Chicago 8, were arrested on charges of conspiring to incite the violence. Their trial began in Chicago the following year, sparking new waves of protests in the city. The judge declared a mistrial for Bobby Seale, one of the co-defendants, and the Chicago 8 became the Chicago 7. In the end, the jury acquitted all 7 of the conspiracy charge, but 5 of the defendants were convicted of crossing state lines with intent to incite a riot. None of the police officers involved was convicted of any wrongdoing. The violence at the Democratic Convention was just a part of one of the most tumultuous years in U.S. history. In January 1968, the USS Pueblo was captured by North Korea. A week later, the Tet Offensive began in Vietnam, which led to U.S. President Lyndon Johnson's announcement that he would not be running for another term. In April 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis. Riots followed. In June, U.S. Senator and presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated in California. October 1968 brought the Summer Olympics to Mexico City, where American athletes John Carlos and Tommy Smith protested against racism with their controversial Black Power salute. 1968's saving grace was Apollo 8, the first manned spaceflight to orbit the moon. The late December mission brought the world Bill Anders' stunning Earthrise photograph. It was one of the boldest ventures in NASA's history, and it laid the groundwork for Apollo 11's moon landing the following July. According to a telegram sent to Mission Commander Frank Borman, Apollo 8 saved 1968. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1071, Seljuk Turks defeat the Byzantine army and capture its emperor at the Battle of Manzikert. In 1346, during the Hundred Years' War, the English army annihilates a French force in Normandy. In 1542, Spaniard Francisco de Orellana reaches the mouth of the Amazon after an 18-month journey. In 1920, the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing women's suffrage, is formally adopted into the U.S. Constitution. In 1939, NBC airs the first televised MLB game between the Reds and the Dodgers at Ebbets Field. In 1948, the temperature hits 108 in New York City during a week-long heat wave that kills 33 people. In 1978, 65-year-old Italian Albino Luciani becomes Pope John Paul I, but dies 33 days later. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Which Star Wars prop sold in 2022 for over $1 million? Han Solo's blaster? Luke Skywalker's lightsaber? Darth Vader's helmet? Or Chewbacca's bandolier? liked learning about the Vietnam War protests at the Democratic Convention? Then you'll love this one about the story behind the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. Tap the screen to keep the story going on Today in History.